afternoon. Today we are going to study about a very important topic, and that is microteaching. Before going to microteaching, we must know what is teaching. So all of us are familiar with the act of teaching, and we know that in teaching there are a number of trainings, number of skills that are required, like skill of introduction, skill of explanation, skill of stimulus variation, and skill of questioning, and many more skills. And side by side, the teacher have to arrange the class, control the class, and maintain the discipline in the class also. He or she has to maintain the motivational level of the students, as well as he has to give the minimum effort with maximum output. Means in minimum time the students should be able to learn maximum, and the retention of that knowledge should be for the maximum amount of time. So for a new learner, for a new teacher trainee, this is very difficult to acquire so many skills in just one point of time. So for that, we have broken the process of teaching into different micro skills, and the process of acquiring these skills is called micro teaching. So today we will be studying about micro teaching. So the question comes, what is micro teaching? So micro teaching is a specialized training given to the people teachers or student trainees to provide them with opportunities for development and practice of specific teaching skills. So the micro teaching is a organized teaching, or we can say that micro teaching is a scaled down teaching. Here you can note these words, scaled down teaching. We have scaled down the teaching in terms of time period, in terms of lesson, in terms of content, as well as in terms of the number of students. So it is a very organized teaching, and it must be regarding the time, duration, content, and the actual classroom. And this is a practice of learning specific skills using a scaled down teaching techniques like content, class size, and skills that reduces the complexities of teaching in a standardized classroom. So what happens during the micro teaching? We introduce the students to a very small number of students, like the size of the class is reduced to 4-5 students, and then the time duration of the actual classroom is about 35-40 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes, and sometimes even 50 or 55 minutes. But in case of micro teaching, the time duration is reduced to 5 to 7 minutes. Please note down, only to 5 to 7 minutes. And you can imagine one more thing, that after reducing the time period to 5 to 7 minutes, the content is also reduced, as well as the skill of teaching, that is also reduced. Instead of using a number of skills, we just focus on the development of only one skill at one time, and until and unless a particular student or a particular teacher trainee doesn't acquire that skill, the teacher trainee has to repeat that lesson until and unless that skill is acquired. So before going into depth of this micro teaching, we will be going for the principles of micro teaching. So for the process of micro teaching, we focus on the one skill at one time. Like if I am learning to introduce the lesson, then my whole focus should be on the introduction of the lesson. And then next is small scale content. Here, the content of the whole lecture is reduced to 5 to 7 minutes. We have to complete our lesson only within 5 to 7 minutes. That means the content of the lesson is reduced only just we can say one topic or subtopic of the whole lesson. And the next is practice makes perfect, because you know that teaching is the skill as well as science. So science you can learn by reading it, you can read out the principles, you can understand them, but whenever it comes to skill, then it comes only with practice. Means practice makes us perfect. So to master these skills, a number of lessons are delivered. Generally, each student have to deliver 2 lessons per subject for per skill. Means if we are practicing 10 skills, then each student needs to deliver 20 lessons, and the most special about these skills is that the student has to acquire those skills. It is not about the delivering of a particular lesson, it is about acquiring that particular skill. One need to acquire that, and until and unless that student doesn't acquire that skill, he or she needs to repeat that lesson until and unless the desired results are acquired. Next is experiments. The teacher educator as well as the teacher trainee can do a number of experiments with his teaching skills. He can learn from his peer group, he can learn from different sources, even from his teacher educator, and he can do a number of experiments at his own to make his teaching perfect. Next thing is feedback. After delivering each and every lesson, the teacher gives feedback and the pupil teacher improves himself or herself on the basis of that feedback, and until and unless that teacher doesn't student doesn't improve on that feedback, he or she has to repeat that lesson and go on practicing. And then last one is self-evaluation opportunities. Here the teachers are given some kind of self-evaluation opportunities. After delivering a certain lesson, sometimes we record their videos and we show their videos to the people teachers, and so that they can evaluate themselves. And moreover, sometimes we also ask them to stand in front of the mirror and give your lesson plan there, and so that you can be a self-criticizer and improve yourself while improving yourself. Now coming to the skills of micro teaching. You know, the process of teaching is a very complex process, and for that we have divided the process of teaching into a number of micro teaching skills, and some of the major skills are skill of introduction, skill of explaining, skill of questioning, skill of demonstration, skill of illustration, skill of reinforcement, skill of stimulus variation, skill of blackboard writing, and skill of closure. So these are some of the skills, and while doing the micro teaching in detail, we will be discussing all the skills one by one. So the next part of the lesson is the steps of micro teaching. So for preparing a certain micro teaching lesson, how many steps are followed there? There are actually 6 steps, and there is a micro teaching cycle. And the very first step comes with micro teaching planning the lesson. So for planning the micro teaching lesson, we need at least 2 hours. In advance, the people teacher prepares the lesson. Whatever he has to be given in 5 to 7 minutes, he prepares that plan, and for making that plan, the people teacher requires at least 2 hours. And then after checking the lesson plan, the teacher educator gives the people teacher the time to represent himself through his lecture or through his teaching, and he is given 5 to 7 minutes time for teaching. And after the people teacher teaches his lesson, the people teacher is given feedback and his very particular lesson by the people teachers and the teacher educators. And after checking the lesson, whatever the mistakes the people teacher has made, he corrects those mistakes and replans his lesson, and this requires the replan period is that of 10 minutes. And after it, he reteaches. After making the improvements in his lesson, he reteaches, he redelivers his lesson, and then after completion of his lesson, re-feedback is given to him, and the re-feedback time is 5 minutes. And in this way, the micro teaching cycle is completed. And suppose in this re-feedback session, he is not given a clear indication of all these things, then what he does, he repeats the whole process again and again, and this micro teaching cycle goes on till the pupil teacher acquires a particular skill. So, coming to next part, there are 3 parts of micro teaching skills, and we call these parts the phases of micro teaching. And these phases are the knowledge acquisition, skill acquisition, and transferring phase. And let us start with knowledge acquisition. What is this knowledge acquisition part? In this knowledge acquisition part, the teacher educator tells the students about a particular skill. Like suppose we are doing with the skill of blackboard writing or skill of chalkboard writing. So, while doing this skill, the people teachers will be given a lecture by the teacher educator on skill of chalkboard writing, and they will be told each and everything about the skill of chalkboard writing. And after acquiring this knowledge, they will have to prepare a lesson plan upon the skill of chalkboard writing, and after writing those skills, making the lesson plans, they have to deliver that lesson, and they have to deliver and redeliver that lesson until and unless that skill is acquired. Means a sub skill of micro teaching like skill of chalkboard writing, still it is not acquired. And you must keep it in mind that each and everything is also divided into a number of components, and the pupil teacher has to acquire each and every component of that skill at least to the level of average. See what happens there? We measure the skill acquisition on a rating scales in which you will be given a kind of rating scale like very good, good, average, poor and below average. So, for getting that skill acquired, you must stand on at least on average, and below average, poor, you have to re-deliver that lesson, and till you don't come on the average level, you have to acquire that skill and repeat the lesson again and again. Then next one is transferring phase. The transferring phase is when the teacher is able to acquire that skill, he goes to his field, like he goes to the real field and delivers his lessons in the real classrooms. So what are the advantages of microteaching? Microteaching is very much important for a new teacher, for a teacher trainee, because it builds confidence of the new trainees. You know, when a teacher trainee enters in a classroom for the first time, there are a number of skills that he or she must have. And this is very much difficult for those people, teachers who have never faced the stage or who have never taught the lesson. And in microteaching, the focus is on the development of each and every skill minutely. So this builds the confidence in the future teachers to face the classroom as well as to deliver the lesson. Next is, this involves a lot of practice. As there is a saying that practice makes a man perfect. So microteaching involves a lot of practice, and practice that is being planned scientifically, and that practice is based upon research, and that practice is the right kind of practice and that develops the trait. Next one is budget friendly. The process of microteaching is budget friendly. It is not costly. You know how we will be doing microteaching? The whole class of your 50 will be divided into a group of 15 to 16 groups. Each group may have 5 to 8 students, and only those 5 to 8 students will be delivering their lessons in front of their peers as well as their teacher educators, and there is not much expenses for this, and this is budget friendly. You don't have to go somewhere to take a separate training or record your videos or do something else. And next one is more learning, because here the focus is not on actual classroom teaching, the focus is on learning, and we have divided each and every skill into different components, and so the students are also focusing on learning and not on the content, and this makes the students make learning oriented and make them proper for flourishing. Next one is, this improves attitude. Microteaching improves attitude towards oneself as well as towards others, because when we are doing practicing on a particular skills, on particular things, then that makes a lot of practice, and this improves the attitude of the learners as well as the teachers towards a particular skill as well as particular student. Next one is it develops communication skills. Obviously, when the students will be given a number of lessons, see if we are practicing 10 skills and 10 skills means 20 lesson plans per subject, 40 lesson plans of micro teaching per subject, and that means a lot of practice, and that too in front of your peers as well as in front of your your teacher educator. So that improves your communication skills. And next one is it promotes systematic lesson planning. Lesson planning, as you know, is a very important part of teaching and learning process, because everything whatever the teacher delivers depends upon whatever he or she has planned in his lesson. So it promotes systematic lesson planning, because each and every lesson is being checked by the teacher and proper guidance is being given. Next one is it gives instant feedback. Micro teaching gives instant feedback. It gives feedback from the pupil teachers as well as from the teacher educators who are very much familiar with the process of teaching. So it helps the teachers, the students to improve according to the feedback, and sometimes they improve themselves according to that feedback. And next is helps to master skills. A number of skills which the pupil teacher, if they try to acquire by themselves, they cannot be able to acquire so many skills. So it's the skill of micro teaching helps to acquire the skills which are required in micro teaching. Next one is the disadvantages of micro teaching. What are the disadvantages of micro teaching? As we know, everything, every positive thing has some kind of advantages as well as disadvantages. So, the very first thing is that it reduces creativity. The micro teaching skill reduces the creativity of the pupil teachers, as it is guided by the teacher educators, and this is quite a rigid process, and so the pupil teachers cannot form the lesson at their own, so it reduces creativity. Next is teaching is limited. As we know, while doing the definition of micro teaching, that micro teaching is a scaled down teaching. So it is for just 5 to 7 minutes, as well as the lesson content is also reduced accordingly. So the teaching is limited, which is not similar to the actual classroom teaching. So we cannot compare delivering 50 micro teaching lessons equal to delivering 50 lessons in actual classroom. Next is lesser students means lesser interest, because this is scaled down teacher in terms of number of students also, and I have told you earlier that only 5 to 8 students are there. So if there are number of students which are not more than 20 or 25, which is the size of an ideal classroom, that means the interest of the teacher is not as much as while teaching a class of 40 students, 50 students. So this is also a disadvantage of micro teaching. And then next one is this wastes a lot of time, because you know micro teaching cycle, you have to prepare each and every lesson accordingly and take the feedback, then re-feedback, and this wastes a lot of time, especially for those students who have acquired the skills already, and for them this is a waste of time. And next point is not realistic and practical. The skill of micro teaching is not realistic and practical because you have to divide a whole class of say 50 students into 16 groups, at least of 5 to 7 or 8 students in each group, and then you need 16 classrooms for them, as well as so many teacher educators for them. And if your college is having at least 100 students, then so much teachers are sometimes not available, and on these terms we can say that micro teaching is not a realistic and practical. And next thing is time consuming. Yes, it takes a lot of time and it wastes a lot of time, and sometimes due to shortage of time these skills may not be acquired. And next one is involves overlapping of certain skills. We have done certain skills of micro teaching like introduction, explaining, questioning, demonstration, illustrating, and say some of the skills like explaining, demonstration, illustration, some of the components of these skills are overlapping with each other, and we cannot make them into separate compartments. We cannot create separate boxes for each skill, and since they are overlapping with each other. So this is all about micro teaching. So we studied today about the definition of micro teaching, principles of micro teaching, skills of micro teaching, advantages and disadvantages of micro teaching. Thank you.